So there's something I wanted to try this week that would be a little bit different for the purposes of picking up better sound quality. Like I said on here before, that microphone that I use is actually a fairly decent microphone. It actually cost me a fair amount of change, but the quality on it just seems to be off every time I try to do anything. So I thought I would do one of these videos on the phone. Now I realize the screen resolution is not going to be as wide as it is on my other videos, but if the sound picks up okay, this may be a new format. I can actually look at the computer at the same time I'm doing this. There was a couple of different things that was on my mind this week. Wasn't really sure what I was going to talk about when I started it out, but I remember last week talking about how it doesn't work, because we hear it read at the beginning of every meeting, and it was cringeworthy just to go through that entire thing, and it was enough to irritate me just going through the whole thing all over again. So I thought this week I would go over something else that I heard read at the end of every meeting for the longest time, and it was amazing to me looking at it now how many people would just nod in agreement with it like it was possessing some kind of really great truth, when in truth it was just more blabber, one of my favorite words to use on here. But it was, it's on pages 83 and 84 of their horseshit big book, and it was read at the end of every meeting a lot of the time, and people would often rip quotes off of it, and they would do wordplay on it, and blah, 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 blah. So I'm going to start with that and see where this video goes. I don't know what direction it'll go. The last couple of videos I've done, I had no idea, no plan as to what direction I was going to take them in. They just sort of magically happened. But it's the one that's read at the end of every meeting, where it says, if we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. Well, I used to see a lot of people nod their heads at that, because this is, and at the time when I was new to the cult religion of AA, I actually thought that this was actually going to occur at some point, that I was going to just be totally fucking blown away by whatever it is that they were promising. I didn't find out until much later on that these are 9-step promises. They're not actually, they're supposed to happen after you do all those bullshit amends, and I could do an entire video about how the amends are not really about saying you're sorry for the things that you've done. That if you look at things in the 12 and 12, and if you look at things in the big book, it's all about another grandiose, self-congratulatory, smug, sanctimonious narrative of, I've changed completely, and I'm here to impress you with how much I've changed, and if you don't accept my amendment, I'll never overcome drinking. If somebody did something dirty to you, if somebody came to you and they told you, I know I ripped you off, I know I stole a lot of money from you, I know I did all these things, but I've got religion now, and I got to make this amendment to you, and if I don't make this amendment, I may never overcome my drinking problem, ever. Would you be inclined to take that as an actual amendment, or would you be inclined to tell them, I don't really care what you do, why don't you go fuck yourself and be done with them? But anyway, the obvious thing that I could bring up here, if we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. At the time this was written, like I let you guys know last week, they only had 40 members. 40 members who didn't even have 2 whole entire years to rub together. Many of whom ended up drinking themselves to death, or ended up drinking again and disappeared. And I got the evidence of that to prove that on the Orange Papers website, which I'm going to pull for some sources in the future about the Oxford group and the entire history of it. In fact, that's part of the subscriber comment I'm going to read at the end of this thing. But we will be amazed before we are halfway through. Halfway through doing what? Halfway through making these so-called amends, where we're supposed to go around to people and tell them what wonderful people we are now that we quit drinking, and that if we don't do this, if we don't skip this step, we may never overcome drinking. Which, by the way, the literature has this weird, twisted idea that we're supposed to go to people we hate, who may have even done us wrong, it says in the literature. It says they may have even been the ones who were in the wrong here. But if we were honest with ourselves, we would see that we played a major part in that. And that was always a sick, twisted fucking thing that I always found about those so-called 9-step promises, because one thing about the 9-step, the things I used to hear people talking about, the amends they made, didn't seem like they were, let's just say that they didn't seem very sane. for all practical intents and purposes. I remember saying, I had to go to my father and I had to tell him, that I was sorry, for my part and all the childhood abuse that I got, all the severe beatings I got, I had to go to my father my stepfather who molested me, and I had to own up my part in this, even though I was 10 years old, I had a part in this and all. Thinking, what the fuck? Just hearing that. And then I would hear people talking about having to forgive their fucking rapists, having to do 9 steps to their rapist and things like that. Now, I would like to believe the people who were saying these things are actually just embellishing the tales for the purpose of fitting in, with the 12-step cult. But after being around, I hope to God nobody would actually go to someone who committed a rape against them and tell them that they have to make a fucking amends to them. There is a reason why the society locks up child molesters. There's a reason why we punish rapists in our society. We don't punish the fucking victims for the crimes in our society. We punish the fucking criminals who perpetuate these crimes. But Bill W.'s cult religion would have you believe that because you're a drinker, because you're an alcoholic, that somehow you play a role in the fact that you got raped or you got molested or you got beaten up and robbed. That you have to go to these people that you hate and you have to look at your part in it and keep your side of the street clean. I don't know if anybody remembers the old HBO Western Deadwood. It was loaded with AA references. I don't know if David Milch, the show creator, was an AA member or not, probably, but there's a scene where the Reverend, who's got like this brain tumor situation, is kind of blabbering all the way, and the main character, who's playing Seth Bullock by Timothy Oliphant, he says, hell or high water, he never made much sense. But now he's just uttering gibberish. My part in things? I haven't got a goddamn part in things. He was making more sense than AA does about that kind of thing. But really and truly, as far as these 9-step promises are concerned, I think the average ordinary human being in their life, when they've done something wrong to people, try to make it right. And I'm going to tell you, if you're the kind of person that goes through life fucking people over, taking from everybody, stealing from everybody, not giving a shit about anybody, doing Bill W.'s cult religion is not going to make you some kind of wonderful human being just because you supposedly did these 12 fucking steps. But you're supposed to be amazed before you're halfway through with all this guilt-inducing shame that the AA program heaps on you. There's a reason why a large majority of sexual crime against people go unreported. Rape victims and victims of sexual violence oftentimes feel like they blame themselves for these crimes that these sick fucking lowlife scumbags do to them. And they get to AA and they're told, well, yeah, it is your fault. You had a part in that. That is actually your fault. They get victim blamed and then get told that they have to forgive these fucking people. What kind of sick, twisted shit is this? And wherever is there any benefit that you're going to be amazed before you're halfway through doing this? But it says we're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. What new freedom and new happiness? I never saw anybody skating by on a new freedom and a new happiness in a fucking AA meeting. 90% of the time, what I saw was a bunch of miserable, sad sack people that was constantly regurgitating the talking points and saying that they were completely unmanageable and completely driven by character defects and 100 forms of fear. But I didn't see nobody experiencing a new freedom and a new happiness. I never experienced a new freedom and a new happiness, even during my brief stints where I didn't have booze before I would relapse and then get told it was all my fault for relapsing. I never knew a new freedom and a new happiness. As a matter of fact, most of that shit was completely, totally humiliating, and I think that the old-timer gurus get high off of that. They get high off of telling people, yeah, you got to go find the guy that raped you and tell him you're sorry for putting yourself in that position where he could do it to you. I think they get high off of this kind of shit. And it makes me cringe to think about how many fucking people who have been brutally victimized in their lives are made to feel like that they're guilty for this because they had a fucking drinking problem, right? We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. Well, I'd say that's one promise that does come true for these AA gurus because that's all they can do is talk about the past. They can talk about what wonderful people they were and how they're just such wonderful people now and how, they were such major badasses back in the day, and they could tell you the 150th DUI they got back in the 70s when they had a gunfight with a police officer and all this other horseshit tall tales, these legends in their own minds. No, they don't want to shut the door on the past. They don't want to move past the past. The past is where they fucking live, telling you how horrible they were and how badass they were. and how major they were in the real world, and now they're just spiritual giants, I guess, because they've done this bullshit. We will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. I never saw anybody that was at peace. I never saw anybody that was serene. I did see a few phonies that would come to AA and act like the sugar would not melt in their mouth. Oh, today everything is so wonderful. Today everything is so glorious. My sponsor told me when I got here, I know some of you may remember him, he did have a thing for little children. We're not perfect in here. We're all spiritually sick. But my sponsor told me, I'm not a doormat today, and I'm so grateful. I love everything I heard. I love everything that was read. You've seen those types of fucking people, and they're completely full of shit. Some of those people that I saw that projected like that in the meetings were some of the most hideous kind of people on earth when you got to know them outside the meeting. But outside of them, I never saw anybody knowing serenity and knowing peace. How are you going to know serenity? How are you going to know peace when your entire identity revolves around being a sick fucking alcoholic? A sick alcoholic that cannot manage their own lives, that cannot get any better, that cannot do anything but demand that God remove all these defects of character because they tell him to do that. Isn't it really strange in the AA program right there at the very beginning of the big book? It tells you that you can't pray for yourself. You just got to pray for other people. Constant thought of others. Hard on yourself but considerate of others. There was a piece of shit bully that I lived with. I lived in his garage for a little while that would actually go around saying that I'm hard on myself and considerate of others. Really, when are you doing that? When you're stealing from people? When you're fucking people over? When you're deliberately causing sponsees to get in trouble with their family members by lying about it behind their backs? When are you doing all of that? But, as far as a new freedom and a new happiness and a new peace, that was nothing that I saw evident in any AA meetings at all. How are you going to do that when your whole entire identity is about being sick? How are you going to do that when you're saying that you can never pray for yourself, you can never, constant thought of others, constant working with others, but yet you're demanding God remove all your defects of character? Isn't it weird that you're not supposed to pray for yourself in AA? You're not supposed to do anything but think about other people, be hard on yourself, and be considerate of others. But God's going to remove all your character defects because you're going to tell him to. He's going to remove your desire to drink because you ask him to. He's just going to do whatever he's just going to fix your personality completely because you humbly ask him to. But you don't pray for yourself. You never pray for that. Even though AA members sit in meetings and say God got them a parking spot. But they don't pray for themselves. They just think about other people. Remember that. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, it says, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. Sometimes I think those narcissistic old-timers never had any feelings of uselessness and self-pity. If they did have uselessness and self-pity, they disappeared because now they become tyrannical bullies that have decided that by inflicting pain and suffering on other people, they don't have to feel bad about themselves being pieces of shit any longer. I guess it's kind of difficult to feel useless when you're too busy being the center of attention in these cult meetings and too busy fucking people over on a regular basis. I don't guess you feel useless any longer, and I don't guess you pity yourself any longer because you think you're a fucking god now. You think you're a guru who needs to be worshipped and listened to, and everybody must pay rapt attention to while you run your fucking mouth in those meetings, Self-seeking will slip away. That is a pile of shit. That is a complete pile of shit. The whole entire thing is about glorifying themselves. The whole entire thing, from the ninth step, from the so-called fourth, fifth step. The fourth and fifth step is there to make you feel guilty, and the ninth step is there to make you go around and tell everybody what a wonderful fucking person you are now, including people that you hate, apparently. Although I don't think any of these narcissistic assholes that run these fucking groups ever do any of this shit. I literally think this is just something they rehearse and they do for 1 hour a day in an AA meeting, and I don't think they practice any of this shit, as evidenced by the type of lives they lead, Let's see. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. They don't ever gain interest in their fellows. All they want to do is blow their own horn and talk about how wonderful they are. Our whole attitude and outlook on life will change. You've gone from being a fucking useless asshole drunk to being a fucking useless asshole who now thinks he's important. in the grand scheme of things and thinks that you're in direct communication on the phone to God every day. Literally, the big book tells you that you gotta make sure that your will and God's will line up. Then you can do whatever the fuck you want. I just thought that you said that most alcoholics are in full flight from reality. They're delusional, right? They suffer from this mental illness that only a spiritual experience can conquer. But they hear the voice of God every day that tells them what to do. And, he takes away their desire to drink, and he gives them parking spaces, and he gives them people that they can see die so that they can live, right? I've actually seen that in AA meetings. I saw a drunk guy today, and he was behind the dumpster, and he was drinking mouthwash, and he was throwing up, and I looked up at this guy, and I said, God, I am so glad you let me see that today. Right. Never mind the poor guy who's fucking dying. Never mind that. God put that there for your fucking show. But you don't have any ego at all today, remember. Fear of people and economic insecurity will leave us. Do you know I used to see assholes all the time trip over that when they would say, by the way, it doesn't say economic insecurity will leave you. It says the fear of economic insecurity will leave you. Well, that's a bunch of bullshit. Bunch of bullshit by the guy who wrote it, too, by the way. He made plenty of money off of AA, and he was literally enriched by AA, and it was a money-making scam for him. So it wasn't about economic insecurity leaving him because God communicated to him directly from the skies above and relieved his desire to drink. Fear of economic insecurity leaves people when they have economic security. Are you really going to tell me that if somebody contacted you by phone or by email and it wasn't a scam and they said you're never going to have to worry about another electricity bill, you're never going to have to worry about another phone bill, you're never going to have to worry about another rental notice, everything is paid for the rest of your life because you won the lottery, you're going to tell me that wouldn't drastically change your outlook on life? You're going to tell me that wouldn't drastically change how you feel? Even though I don't believe in you see these stories about people who win the lottery and they blow everything and they have these multi-trillion-dollar homes and all these race cars and all this other bullshit and they file their fucking bankruptcy. I never understood that. Like if I had 20 million in the bank, I don't think that my life would just radically go haywire. I think that I would know I've got money in the bank and I don't got to worry about finances any longer. So you know what? I can take it easy a little bit. But fear of economic insecurity is going to leave you because you're doing a bunch of steps, because you're sitting in meetings the rest of your life. I guess fear of economic insecurity leaves them because their career move in life is to go to AA meetings and sit in AA meetings and, make a career out of going to AA. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. Really? Is that why everybody with 20, 30 years sits in AA meetings and says, you see, I may be here 20, 30 years and hadn't had a drink in 20, 30 years, but I'm still a sick alcoholic. I can't trust the first thought that goes through my head, I'm driven by self-will and all of that. Yeah, you're intuitively knowing how to handle situations by making a career out of sitting in fucking meetings. I mean, intuitively knowing how to handle a situation which used to baffle you literally can be accomplished without this shit. It can be accomplished by quitting drinking. Do you know how many things in life I was able to finally solve when I wasn't rushing out to get drunk all the time, when things would pop up? When things pop up in my life today, for the most part, I say, you know what? This is what I think I got to do. I sit around and I figure it out. Something AA says you cannot do, of course. But I figure it out because I'm not in a drunken alcohol haze any longer. It has nothing to do with AA God or the steps or any of that bullshit. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. They don't believe that. They don't believe that at all. Why do you think the old-timers expect to be treated like fucking royalty? And why do you think they herd sponsees around like they're cattle? They don't believe that God's doing for them what they can't do for themselves. They secretly believe that they're it, that they are chosen by God. Okay, but there's not one definition of humility or humbleness about them. They know that drinking is a choice. They know alcoholism is not a disease. Why do you think they say to people all the time, your best thinking got you here? I mean, if I had a mental illness and a mental disease or whatever, then my best thinking wouldn't have shit to do with it. Look, when you've got an addiction, be it cigarettes or booze, it has nothing to do with thinking. It's a situation pops up in life, kind of like with cigarettes. When I used to get behind the wheel of my car, I vape, and I'm still kind of smoking here and there, but When I used to get behind the wheel of my car, the first thing I would do is reach for the cigarettes and light one up. It's an instinctual habit. It has nothing to do with God doing something for me that I can't do for myself. It's trying to break habits. There's a lady on here with a very good video. She's got like a philosophical channel about developing new habits to replace the old ones that maybe I'll post a link to on one of my videos, because I thought it was very, very helpful. You're not really so much as I've got to quit this horrible habit as you are developing something different to get rid of the old habit, right? Are these extravagant promises? No, they're phony fucking bullshit. That's what they are, but that's the point. Everybody yells out, "We think not." They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. Really, were they among those first 40 members? When you hear that shit in AA nowadays, you think it's decades and decades of trial and error behind you. And you think that all these people have gone through these steps and all this stuff has happened to them. At the time that was written, they had less than 100 members. None of them had been sober longer than a couple of years. So this is just something he made up and typed because it sounded good, I guess. They will always materialize if we work for them. Well, wait a minute. How are they going to always materialize if I work for them, if God's doing for me what I can't do for myself? I think you may have made another contradiction there, Bill. I think, yeah, they're going to materialize if I work for them, but it's God doing for me what I can't do for myself. It's kind of like one of the other millions of inherent contradictions in this whole entire idiotic, silly program. You're never supposed to pray for yourself. You ask God to remove your defects of character. You can't scare an alcoholic into quit drinking, but alcoholics are driven by 100 forms of fear. I could go on and on with the contradictions, but I think, you get the gist of it all. And in 21 minutes, I think I've said about all I can say on these silly, phony promises. But now I'm going to scoot up a little bit so I can read the subscriber comment. Now, this I'm going to actually have to research because I didn't know this. And I knew about the Oxford group. I'll get to it in a minute, what I didn't know about. But it says, don't forget that Bill W. pirated the program from the Oxford group's 6-step program. That I know. Bill W. and Dr. Bob were involved in the Oxford group movement, and AA itself was a part of the Oxford group the first 4 years. That I knew about. I'm getting to the good part. The Oxford group was a huge international cult in the 1920s and 30s. In 1939, the Oxford group split into two groups, AA and MRA, moral rearmament. That I'm not 100% about, because I do know that the Oxford group rebuilt itself as MRA at one point, but I thought that was after World War II, because they kind of were on the side of the Nazis during World War II. They didn't believe in getting involved in conflict because, it's wrong to go to war unless it's, as far as going to war against Hitler was concerned. Believe it or not, I could give you a whole detail of that, and I will in another video later on. But here is where it gets really crazy, they write. The founder of the Oxford group, Frank Buckman, created the 6-step program to help men quit masturbation. That I got to find out about. If that's true, that opens a whole new lunacy to this entire fucking thing. But if that's true, I'm going to find that out. I'm going to look into it. Also, before founding the Oxford group, Buckman was the manager at a YMCA branch where he regularly sexually assaulted the boys who resided there. That I'm going to have to look into. I've heard stories, and I can't remember exactly where I heard these stories, but it was that Frank Buckman had a thing for underage children, so it wouldn't shock me. Religious fanatic leaders especially seem to have a thing for underage children. Don't know what the fuck that is. But that's not all, folks. Buckman was also a fervent Nazi who praised Hitler profusely on the radio programs he was on. I do know for a fact he did say he thanked God for a man like Adolf Hitler. I do know that at one point he said he envisioned the worldwide dictatorship of men under God control. And then he says, so there you have it. A program to combat masturbation penned by a Nazi pedophile. That's great. I got to admit, that's great. That's a golden comment for the week. Anyway, I'm going to test this video out with a phone. I'm going to see how it uploads. I'm going to see if the sound quality is a little bit better. If this works out, then I'm just going to start using the phone and stop. I don't have to buy a lot of fancy equipment and shit like that, So I'll see you guys next week and chime in on the comments about these so-called phony fucking promises and how they don't really... I can't believe I ever took this crap seriously, Until next time.